The jellyfish kept rising behind the glass, pale and weightless, while Elias Rowan sat beneath them at a table set for two. His coffee had gone cold. The candle between the plates had burned low enough to drown in its own wax. Every few minutes, the doors of the aquarium cafe opened and sent a ribbon of winter air across the floor, and every time, Elias looked up before he could stop himself. At 8:17, the message arrived. "I'm sorry. I thought I was ready for this, but I'm not. Please don't call. No explanation, no traffic, no emergency, just a clean little sentence that erased 3 weeks of careful conversation and the first evening he had arranged for himself in almost 4 years. Elias read it twice, locked his phone, and looked toward the enormous blue window where moon jellies drifted through filtered water. His 8-year-old daughter, Nia, would ask whether he had fun. She would study his face with those solemn brown eyes and know if he lied. I was reaching for his coat when a woman in a dark green dress crossed the cafe, pulled out the empty chair, and sat down without asking. "Don't leave," she said. Elias stared at her. She had no purse, no coat, and one small tear in the cuff of her sleeve. She looked composed from a distance, but up close, exhaustion trembled beneath her eyes. "I'm sorry?" he asked. "I just walked out of a dinner upstairs," she replied. 6 people spent 90 minutes discussing the future of this city without mentioning anyone who actually lives in it. You look like your evening failed too. Show me somewhere honest. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Share your city or country in the comments. And if you believe dignity and second chances still matter, stay with us. Stories like this remind us that grace often enters quietly, through the chair we thought would remain empty. Now, back to Elias. He did not answer immediately. Elias had built his adult life around not making reckless decisions. Recklessness had once been his younger sister Lena's language. Sudden road trips, midnight promises, beautiful plans with no foundations beneath them. After Lena died from an overdose 7 years earlier, leaving behind a frightened 1-year-old girl, Elias became Nia's legal guardian before he had even understood how to fasten a child's car seat. Since then, his world had been measured in school calendars, grocery receipts, asthma inhalers, and alarm clocks. He worked as a conservator in the city map archive, repairing torn survey sheets, faded transit diagrams, and hand-drawn neighborhood plans that most people never knew existed. He liked the work because damaged things did not lie about being damaged. Paper showed every fold, stain, burn, and careless hand. If you were patient, you could strengthen it without pretending the wound had never happened. The woman across from him seemed to possess none of that patience. Her fingers tapped the tabletop in a precise rhythm. "You sit down with strangers often?" Elias asked. "Never. Leave formal dinners without a coat? Only when the alternative is committing a felony with a dessert fork." His mouth almost betrayed him with a smile. "And you expect me to take you somewhere?" "Not somewhere expensive," she said. "Not somewhere impressive. Somewhere you would go if nobody were watching." Elias studied her more carefully. There was command in her posture, but no entitlement in her request. She was not flirting, not yet. She was asking for rescue without using the word. "There's a dumpling counter near the old ferry terminal," he said. "Plastic stools. Cash only. The owner insults customers when he likes them." "Perfect. You don't even know my name. Then tell me on the way." She stood as though the decision had already been approved. Elias looked once more at the empty chair, the dying candle, and the message on his phone. Then he put on his coat. "Elias," he said. "My name is Elias Rowan." The woman nodded. Mara Vale. That name meant nothing to him yet. By midnight, it would mean too much. They left through this public aquarium entrance. Passing families gathered beneath a suspended whale skeleton. Children dragged sleepy feet across the blue carpet, while recorded ocean sounds rolled from hidden speakers. Mara walked quickly, barefoot inside narrow black heels that had clearly been chosen for appearance rather than escape. At the revolving doors, she slowed. 3 men in tailored jackets were waiting outside near a line of black vehicles. One of them saw her and raised a hand. Mara stepped backward behind a stone column. "Friends?" Elias asked. "Directors. Do directors usually hunt in packs?" "Only when their bonuses are frightened." She glanced toward a side exit marked for the riverside promenade. "That way." Elias followed her through the door and into the wind. The river lay black beyond the railing, broken by bands of reflected city light. Mara inhaled as if the cold were medicine. Behind them, the aquarium glowed like a blue lantern. "Your coat," Elias said. "I left it upstairs." "Convenient. I wasn't planning a graceful departure." He removed his scarf and offered it. She hesitated before taking it, perhaps because people usually offered her things with expectations attached. "This does not mean I'm accepting responsibility for whatever you're running from," he said. "You're very cautious. I'm responsible for another human being." "A child?" Elias nodded. "Nia. 8. Mara wrapped the scarf around her neck. It was rust-colored wool, unevenly knitted by Nia during a schoolcraft week. One end was wider than the other. Mara touched the crooked stitches with her fingertips. "She made this. How can you tell? Nothing made by a machine would be allowed to have this much personality." They began walking along the river. Mara's stride softened to match his. "Does Nia think you're still at dinner?" she asked. "She thinks I'm attempting to have a social life." "Attempting?" Her word. "She made me a checklist." "What was on it?" "Ask questions. Don't talk about antique maps for more than 10 minutes. Don't correct anyone's geography unless necessary." Mara laughed, and the sound surprised both of them. It was not polished or delicate. It escaped like something that had been locked up too long. The dumpling counter occupied the corner of a narrow building, pressed between a locksmith and a closed flower shop. A red paper lantern swung above the door, squeaking whenever the wind turned. Inside, steam blurred the windows, and the air smelled of ginger, vinegar, and toasted sesame oil. 6 plastic stools faced a steel counter scarred by decades of bowls. Mr. Hahn, who had owned the place longer than Elias had been alive, looked up from folding wrappers. His white eyebrows rose when he saw Elias enter with Mara. "You finally bring a woman," he said, "and she looks angry already." "Good evening to you too," Elias replied. Mara slid onto a stool. "I'm not angry." Mr. Hahn studied her face. "Then you need soup. Angry people need tea. Empty people need soup." Without waiting for permission, he set 2 bowls on the counter and dropped dumplings into boiling broth. Mara watched him with an attention she had not given the aquarium dinner. "What were they discussing upstairs?" Elias asked. She traced a line through the condensation on her water glass. "A redevelopment corridor, housing, transit access, commercial zoning. That sounds almost useful." "It could be. The people at the table weren't discussing usefulness. They were discussing how much value can be extracted before the public notices what disappeared." Elias turned toward her. "And you were there because?" Mr. Hahn placed the bowls before them. Mara thanked him, then remained silent until he moved away. "Because the company proposing the corridor belongs to me." The steam rose between them. Elias waited for the joke. None came. "What kind of company?" "Urban engineering, transit systems, water infrastructure, renewable construction materials, real estate, when the board believes I'm too distracted to object." "Mara Vale," Elias repeated. Recognition arrived slowly, assembled from newspaper headlines and radio reports. Vale Meridian, the youngest chief executive in the company's history. A woman credited with turning a failing regional contractor into an international infrastructure empire. Elias set down his spoon. You could have mentioned that. Would you have brought me here? Probably not. That is why I didn't. Her honesty was irritating. It was also difficult to argue with. Mr. Han called from the stove. Rich people still chew. Eat before it gets cold. Mara obeyed. She bit into the first dumpling too quickly, burned her tongue, and tried to conceal it with the dignity of a queen surviving an assassination attempt. Elias looked away to protect her pride, but his shoulders betrayed him. You're laughing, she said. Quietly. That is still laughing. You fled a corporate dinner without a coat and got defeated by soup. It has narrative balance. She narrowed her eyes, then laughed too. The tension between them loosened. They ate slowly while the windows clouded completely, sealing the small restaurant away from the city. Mara told him she had grown up above her grandmother's laundromat in South Chicago, where the dryers shook the apartment walls until midnight. Her father had disappeared before she could remember his face. Her mother moved through a sequence of jobs, relationships, and promises, leaving Mara to be raised by a grandmother who ironed church shirts for 50 cents apiece and believed debt was a form of captivity. I didn't inherit the company, Mara said. People assume I did, because that version makes them comfortable. I joined Vale Meridian when it was a bankrupt bridge subcontractor with 23 employees. The name was my grandmother's. I used every cent from selling the laundromat building after she died. And now? 42,000 employees in 11 countries. Elias whistled softly. That is a large distance from folding towels. Not as large as people think. The work is still stains, heat, timing, and customers who believe shouting changes physics. She asked about the map archive. Elias described repairing a fire-damaged atlas from 1891, rebuilding missing corners with handmade Japanese tissue, and finding a penciled note from a surveyor who had marked a spring that no longer appeared on modern plans. He expected her attention to drift. Instead, she asked why old maps mattered when satellites could measure everything more accurately. Because accuracy isn't the only kind of truth, he said. A map shows what someone believed was worth naming. Mara stopped eating. Something in that sentence reached her. Outside, a siren passed and faded. Inside, Mr. Han folded another dumpling. For a few quiet seconds, nobody spoke. Elias's phone vibrated against the counter. The screen displayed a drawing Nia had sent through the babysitter's phone. A purple octopus wearing glasses, holding a sign that read, "Did you ask good questions?" Mara leaned slightly, not enough to invade his privacy, but enough to see his expression soften. That's her. Elias nodded. She communicates through illustrations when she thinks adults are being emotionally inefficient. He typed back, "Yes, I met someone who argues with soup." Nia responded almost immediately with a row of stars. Mara's face changed as she watched him. The sharpness remained, but it reorganized itself around an unfamiliar tenderness. "You said you're responsible for her," she said. "Not that she was your daughter." Elias placed the phone down. He rarely told the full story to strangers. It invited sympathy, questions, and judgments about Lena. Yet Mara had offered the truth about the laundromat without decorating it. "She was my sister's child," he said. Lena struggled for years. She loved Nia, but love and stability are not always the same gift. When Lena died, the social worker asked whether I could take Nia for 2 nights. That became a week, then 6 months. Then a courtroom document with both our names on it. Mara did not say she was sorry. Elias appreciated that. "Was it difficult?" she asked. "Every hour." "Did you regret it?" "Not once." He looked at Nia's drawing again. "I regretted being unprepared. I regretted losing patience. I regretted every night I was too tired to make grief feel safe, but never her." Mara turned her spoon between her fingers. "Most people speak about responsibility as though it is a chain. Sometimes it is. You make it sound like an anchor." Elias remembered the aquarium, the empty seat, the dead candle. "An anchor can keep you from drifting," he said. "It can also stop you from moving when the storm is over." Mr. Han arrived with 2 sesame buns they had not ordered. For the child, he said, placing them into a paper bag. Then he pointed at Mara. And for the angry woman's breakfast. I told you I'm not angry. Then tomorrow you bring back my scarf, Elias said. His scarf, Mr. Han corrected. You steal scarf, you come back. Good business. When they stepped outside, snow had begun to fall in thin, dry grains. Mara's phone displayed 31 missed calls. She looked at the screen, switched it off, and slipped it into her pocket. That seems irresponsible for a chief executive, Elias said. For the next hour, I am unemployed. I doubt your board agrees. My board rarely agrees with reality. They walked toward the ferry terminal, where the final public boat crossed the river at midnight. Elias intended to take the train home, but Mara stopped beneath the glowing timetable. Does the ferry go anywhere useful? Depends on your definition. Where does it go? Across. Excellent. The terminal was nearly empty. A janitor polished the floor in slow circles. A young couple slept against each other near the vending machines. Elias bought 2 tickets before Mara could object. Leveling the field, he said. She looked at the thin paper ticket as though nobody had purchased something ordinary for her in years. On the upper deck, the wind hit hard enough to steal their breath. They stood beneath a narrow metal awning while the boat pushed away from the pier. The skyline opened before them. Glass towers, blinking cranes, apartment windows, bridges strung with white lights. Mara leaned against the rail. From conference rooms, the city looks like an asset, she said. From here, it looks alive. Cities usually do when you include the people. She accepted the rebuke without defense. The corridor project will displace 314 households, she said. The official estimate says 180. Why the difference? Because temporary residents, informal leases, and converted units are excluded from the report. And you know that. I read the appendix. Will you stop it? The river slapped against the hull. Mara stared toward the towers bearing logos her company had helped construct. I don't know, she said. Elias appreciated the absence of a heroic promise. Power without certainty, he replied, might be the first honest thing you've said tonight. Mara looked at him. I sat with a stranger and admitted soup defeated me. Second most honest. She smiled, but her eyes remained on the city, as if she were seeing the cost of every light. On the opposite shore, they followed a pedestrian path beneath an old, elevated railway. Murals covered the concrete supports. Bright birds, neighborhood portraits, names of people who had once lived there. Mara stopped before a painting of an elderly woman holding a basket of bread. My grandmother would have hated this, she said. The mural? Being painted. She believed public attention was the beginning of trouble. Elias tucked his hands into his pockets. Lena believed attention was proof you existed. And you? I think being seen by the wrong people can destroy you. Being seen by the right person can save you. Mara turned toward him, but Elias continued walking before the sentence could become too intimate. The snow thickened. They passed closed barber shops, a laundromat humming behind steamed windows, and a tiny bookstore where handwritten recommendations filled the display. Mara read each card through the glass. You notice everything, Elias said. I'm usually being shown only what someone prepared for me to notice. That sounds lonely. It is efficient. That wasn't my question. She exhaled, and her breath formed a white cloud. Yes, she said. It is lonely. 3 sentences, quick and unprotected. Then silence. The elevated tracks rattled as a freight train crossed somewhere above them, sending rust-colored snow from the beams. Mara stepped closer beneath the awning of the bookstore. Elias noticed that the tear in her cuff had widened. What happened upstairs? He asked. One of the directors grabbed my arm when I stood to leave. Her voice remained calm, which made the admission more disturbing. He said I was becoming emotional. Elias felt anger rise, immediate and clean. Did you hit him with the dessert fork? I considered it. You should document it. I own the company. That doesn't make you less entitled to respect. Mara looked at him with a stillness more powerful than surprise. Nobody had told her to protect herself. People expected her to be protection. Under the bookstore light, with snow melting in her hair, the most powerful woman in the city suddenly looked tired of being invincible. The train station was 2 blocks away. Elias expected Mara to call a driver, but she followed him down the stairs without complaint. The platform smelled of wet concrete and hot metal. Advertisements peeled from the tiled walls. A violinist near the turnstiles played a slow version of an old folk song, his case open before him. Mara stopped walking. "My grandmother used to hum that while closing the laundromat," she said. The musician's bow moved with gentle precision. Elias dropped a few bills into the case. Mara reached for her wallet, then paused and put it away. "Why did you stop?" he asked. "Because I was about to give him too much." "Is that a problem?" "Sometimes money changes a moment into a transaction." Elias nodded. "You're learning. Don't become unbearable." They boarded a nearly empty train and sat across from one another. As the carriage lurched forward, the city became a sequence of dark windows, platform lights, and brief reflections. Mara removed Elias's scarf and folded it carefully in her lap. "Why were you at the aquarium?" she asked. "The woman who left." "Her name was Celeste. She teaches ceramics at Nia's school. We had coffee twice. Tonight was supposed to be the first real date." "Did you like her?" "I liked the possibility of liking her." "That sounds safe. Safety matters when someone else depends on you." Mara looked down at the crooked scarf. "Does Nia want you to date?" "She wants a dog. She believes a partner might improve the probability." Mara smiled. Strategic child. Dangerously. What kind of dog? One with no medical expenses, no shedding, and the ability to stay alone during work. So, a painted dog. That is what I told her. The train rocked around a curve. Mara's knee brushed his. Neither moved away. "What about you?" Elias asked. "When was your last real date?" She considered the question. "I have attended dinners with men who expected access to my calendar, company, body, or reputation. I'm not sure any of those qualify." "That sounds worse than being abandoned beneath jellyfish. Much worse. Jellyfish are honest predators." By the time they reached Elias's neighborhood, the snowfall had softened the streetlights. His apartment occupied the 2nd floor above a family-owned hardware store. The windows were dark, except for the blue glow of a nightlight in Nia's room. They stopped beside the entrance. Mara checked the time and finally turned on her phone. Messages flooded the screen. She ignored them. "My driver can be here in 6 minutes," she said. "That sounds more realistic than inviting a corporate fugitive upstairs." "I wasn't expecting an invitation." "Good. I was hoping for one." Elias looked at her. The directness of the statement removed every comfortable place to hide. "My babysitter is 72, he said. "She reports everything to the neighborhood." "Then I should protect your reputation." "I don't have one worth protecting." "Everyone has one. Some are simply less expensive." A black vehicle turned onto the street in the distance. Mara stepped closer. There was no dramatic music, no perfect line, only the hum of the hardware store sign and the faint scraping of a snowplow several blocks away. "Tonight began because someone failed to arrive," she said. "I don't want it to end because both of us are afraid to." "Mara, our lives are not merely different. They function under separate laws of physics. You repair maps, paper maps. Then you know borders are drawn by people." Elias almost laughed. "That sounds profound until you remember some borders are guarded." "I have spent my life entering guarded rooms." Her voice softened. "I'm asking whether you will let me enter one that matters." The vehicle stopped at the curb. The driver waited without leaving the car. Elias thought of Nia sleeping upstairs, of Lena's chaos, of every promise he had made never to invite uncertainty into their home. Then he thought of Mara sitting in a plastic restaurant, burned by soup. listening to him talk about damaged paper as if it mattered. "Give me your number," he said. Mara's eyes warmed. "You know my company. I am not calling a corporate switchboard and identifying myself as the abandoned aquarium man." "Why not?" "Dignity." She took his phone, entered a number, and returned it. The contact read simply, "Mara, angry woman." "Good night, mapmaker," she said. "Good night, soup victim." Nia was awake when Elias entered the apartment. She sat cross-legged on the living room rug wearing dinosaur pajamas, while Mrs. Alvarez slept in the armchair with a mystery novel open on her chest. Nia pressed one finger to her lips and pointed toward the kitchen. Elias followed. On the table stood a plate covered with foil and a note written in careful block letters. "Emergency grilled cheese. Dating takes energy." Elias felt his throat tighten. "You should be asleep," he whispered. "You should be home by 10:30, Nia replied. She looked him over, cataloging snow, expression, and missing scarf. "Did the teacher come?" Elias shook his head. She changed her mind. Nia's face hardened with protective anger. "That is rude." "It is. Did you cry?" "No." "Did you want to?" "For about 7 minutes." Nia considered this, then pointed toward his neck. "Where is my scarf?" "A woman borrowed it." Her eyebrows rose. "A different woman?" "Yes." "That seems fast." Elias covered a laugh with his hand. Nia climbed onto a chair and leaned across the table. "Who is she?" "Her name is Mara. She was having a bad evening, too." "Did you ask good questions?" "I think so." "Did you talk about maps too long?" "Almost certainly." "Did she leave?" He looked toward the window, where tire tracks marked the snow beneath the streetlight. Eventually, Nia lifted the foil and pushed half a sandwich toward him. "Will she come back?" "I don't know." Nia watched him take a bite. "You smiled before you answered," she said. "That means you hope so." Children often speak truth before adults have built defenses against it. Elias stared at the grilled cheese and remembered Mara saying borders were drawn by people. "Hope is not a plan," he replied. "Neither is being scared," Nia said. Then she slid off the chair and returned to bed, leaving him alone with the sharp, uncomfortable possibility that she was right. Elias did not call Mara the next morning. He did not call during lunch, when the archive's fluorescent lights flickered above a collection of 19th-century canal surveys. He did not call at 4 when Nia sent him a message consisting only of a phone icon and an accusing eyebrow. By Monday evening, his caution had matured into cowardice. Then a courier arrived at the archive carrying a flat archival box. Inside lay Elias's rust-colored scarf, professionally cleaned, wrapped in acid-free tissue, and accompanied by no flowers, no jewelry, no dramatic invitation. There was only a handwritten note. "Maps deserve accurate legends. Dinner Thursday. Somewhere Nia approves. M." His supervisor, Mr. Bell, appeared over his shoulder. "Is that romance?" "It is a returned scarf. With archival tissue. She is thorough. She is terrifying." Elias folded the note into his pocket and called during his train ride home. Mara answered on the first ring. 4 days, she said. "I was told single fathers have scheduling constraints. I didn't realize they included monastic vows. I was evaluating risk. And the risk remains unacceptable." A pause. "I see. Thursday at 6:30, he continued. "There's a public astronomy night at the Orion Dome. Nia volunteers at the tactile exhibit. You can join us, but there are rules." "How many?" Nia wrote 11. "Send them. You will regret that confidence." On Thursday, Mara arrived without a driver, wearing jeans, flat boots, and an expression suggesting she had spent 20 minutes arguing with herself about every item. Nia met her beneath the planetarium's copper entrance canopy. She examined Mara from shoes to eyebrows. "You are the scarf thief," she said. "Temporary borrower," Mara corrected. Did you bring snacks? 3 types, Nia nodded. You may proceed. Elias watched them walk inside together, one cautious child and one powerful woman suddenly subject to an 8-year-old's rules. Something quiet shifted inside him. It was not trust yet. Trust takes time, but grace often begins as permission. The Orion Dome had been built in 1936 when public buildings were designed to make ordinary citizens feel that knowledge belonged to them. Its circular lobby smelled of dust, brass polish, and old carpet. A painted night sky curved across the ceiling, chipped in places but still luminous. Elias volunteered there twice a month, repairing display labels and creating raised line maps for visitors with limited vision. Nia had first come during a period when grief made sleep difficult. She would lie awake asking whether her mother could still see her, though Lena had never been stable enough to become the mother Nia needed. At the Dome, an elderly astronomer named Dr. Saeed had shown Nia how light continued traveling after a star died. Gone is not the same as meaningless, he had told her. Since then, the building had become sacred ground. Mara seemed to understand that immediately. She did not ask for a private tour. She stood in line, accepted a paper wristband, and let Nia lead her to a tactile model of the solar system. Close your eyes, Nia instructed. What? Because seeing can make you lazy. Mara obeyed. Nia guided her hand over the raised rings of Saturn and the rough surface of Mars. Elias watched Mara's face soften with concentration. What do you feel? Nia asked. Distances, Mara replied. Wrong. You feel shapes. Are those different? Very. Nia moved Mara's fingers toward Earth. Distance is what people measure when they don't know how to reach something. Mara opened her eyes. Across the exhibit, Elias froze. The sentence had come from no adult he knew. Mara looked toward him, and for one breath, the noisy lobby disappeared. 3 quick words passed between them without sound. She sees us. Later, under the projected stars, Nia fell asleep against Elias's shoulder. Mara sat beside him in the darkness. I understand your anchor now, she whispered. Elias looked down at the child's hand curled around his sleeve. She is also the storm, he said. The important people usually are. Over the next 2 months, Mara entered their lives without attempting to reorganize them. That restraint mattered. She came to Saturday breakfasts and accepted frozen waffles without sending a chef. She learned that Nia hated socks with thick seams, that Elias alphabetized spices but lost his keys daily, and that the hardware store downstairs received deliveries at 6 every Tuesday morning. Elias learned that Mara slept poorly before board meetings, peeled labels from water bottles when anxious, and carried her grandmother's laundromat key in the inner pocket of every jacket. They did not pretend the differences between them had vanished. When Mara invited Elias to a concert, a photographer captured them outside the hall. By morning, strangers had identified his employer, his address, and Lena's criminal record. The articles called him a mystery archivist, a single-father distraction, and in one particularly cruel headline, Mara Vale's charity romance. Elias closed the page before Nia could see it. Mara arrived at his apartment 30 minutes later with lawyers, security plans, and a fury powerful enough to frighten weather. I can have every image removed, she said. No, you can't. I can sue. Then the story becomes larger. I will not let them use your sister against you. Elias remained quiet until she stopped pacing. You cannot purchase silence every time reality becomes painful, he said. I'm trying to protect you. Protection without permission becomes control. Mara flinched. He regretted the sharpness, but not the truth. 3 sentences. Fast. Then the room slowed. Snow pressed against the windows. Nia's colored pencils lay scattered across the table. Mara lowered herself into a chair, all her corporate armor suddenly too heavy. What do you need? She asked yet. Elias sat opposite her. Respect. Not rescue. She nodded. The billionaire who could move markets did the most difficult thing power can do. She listened. Their first serious fracture began with a map. Elias was cataloging municipal property transfers when he opened a digital planning file marked North River Cultural Consolidation. The diagram showed 12 parcels outlined in red. At the center stood the Orion Dome. Ownership would transfer through a subsidiary to Vail Meridian Development. The accompanying concept replaced the planetarium, public library annex, and 2 blocks of affordable apartments with a glass commercial complex called Meridian Crescent. Elias read the report twice, then a third time. The structural assessment claimed the dome's copper roof was unstable, its foundation beyond repair, and its accessibility upgrades economically unreasonable. He knew at least 2 claims were false. Volunteer engineers had inspected the building 6 months earlier. The roof needed restoration, not demolition. His hands went cold. Mara had spoken often about projects, pressure, and hostile directors, but never this. When she arrived at his apartment that evening, Nia was painting constellations at the kitchen table. Elias asked her to go finish in her room. Nia looked between them, recognized danger, and obeyed without protest. Elias placed the printed map before Mara. She did not touch it. Her eyes moved across the page, and something in her expression closed. "How long have you known?" he asked. "About the acquisition package? 3 weeks? About the dome? Not specifically. Your name is on the authorization. My digital approval covers hundreds of preliminary reviews. That is not an answer. It is the truth." Elias heard his own pulse. You sat beneath those stars. You listened to Nia tell you what that place meant. You never thought to mention your company might erase it. I did not know the dome was included, but you knew neighborhoods were. Mara stood very still. I have stopped 6 displacement projects this year, and approved how many because you were too busy to read the map? Silence entered the room like winter through a broken window. Mara reached for the report. Elias placed his hand over it. For the first time since the aquarium, he did not trust her to touch what mattered. Mara did not defend the project's merits. That almost made it worse. She called her chief counsel from the hallway and demanded every document connected to North River. Within an hour, 3 encrypted files appeared on her tablet. She read while Elias stood by the window. Nia remained silent in her bedroom, though the thin wall carried the faint sound of colored pencils rolling across the floor. The acquisition was assembled by Caldwell, Mara said finally. Vincent Caldwell, chairman of Vail Meridian's development division, had been one of the men at the aquarium dinner. The structural report was commissioned through a firm owned by his brother-in-law. So stop it. I can suspend the demolition application. I cannot cancel the acquisition without a board vote unless I prove misconduct. You are the chief executive. I am not a monarch. That distinction must be comforting when homes disappear. Mara closed her eyes. Elias saw the sentence land, but his anger had outrun mercy. She turned the tablet toward him. The company has already paid deposits. Pension funds are involved. Contractors have signed agreements. If I act without evidence, Caldwell will argue that I allowed a personal relationship to override shareholder duty. Then perhaps our relationship is useful to him. Do you believe I used you? Her voice was quiet. I don't know what I believe. Mara's face emptied. That answer hurt more than accusation. She took the laundromat key from her pocket and turned it once between her fingers. I can buy the dome personally, she said. Transfer it to Nia. Establish an endowment. Elias stared at her. You still think the answer is ownership? I am offering a solution. You are offering charity to avoid justice. Justice takes time. People with power always say that to people who are about to lose something. Mara stepped backward as if struck. No shouting followed, no dramatic threat. Only 2 exhausted adults standing beside a map that revealed the distance between intention and consequence. She collected her coat. I will investigate, she said. Elias opened the door. Do it because it is right. Mara looked toward Nia's closed bedroom. I no longer know whether you think I can. Then she left. For 12 days, Mara did not call. Elias attended neighborhood meetings at the Dome, where residents filled folding chairs beneath peeling constellations. Retired teachers brought property records. Tenants described landlords refusing repairs because they expected buyouts. Dr. Saeed carried boxes of attendance logs showing that more than 60,000 students had visited the planetarium in 5 years. Elias used archive maps to prove that the company's survey omitted a protected underground water channel, making Caldwell's proposed tower design more expensive and dangerous than advertised. Yet facts alone did not stop machinery. Demolition notices appeared on the dome's doors. Nia ripped one down and tore it into tiny pieces before Elias could stop her. She lied, Nia said. Mara didn't know. She should know. It has her name. Elias had no answer. That night, Nia placed the rust-colored scarf into a bum and pushed it beneath her bed. Across the city, Mara worked through 3 consecutive nights. She dismissed her assistants, ordered raw accounting files, and traced shell companies through 7 layers of invoices. Caldwell had inflated acquisition costs, concealed tenant counts, and redirected consulting fees to a foundation controlled by his family. More troubling, 2 board members had approved the scheme in exchange for future investment positions. Mara could expose them, but the evidence implicated her office's negligence. Her signature appeared everywhere. She had not taken the money, written the false reports, or chosen the families to displace. Yet she had built a system that rewarded speed, secrecy, and obedience. Grace does not excuse responsibility. It makes responsibility possible. At dawn on the 13th day, Mara stood alone in the Vale Meridian boardroom. The city spread below like a diagram of illuminated veins. She called the Federal Compliance Office, then the City Inspector General. Afterward, she wrote 2 letters. One removed Caldwell from operational authority. The other offered her own resignation if the board refused a public investigation. For the first time in years, Mara chose truth without knowing whether it would preserve her power. The public planning hearing took place inside a high school auditorium because too many residents attended for City Hall to hold them. Elias sat beside Nia in the front row. She wore noise-reducing headphones around her neck and held a tactile map of the Orion Dome against her chest. Mara had not responded to his last message, which contained only the hearing time. Elias assumed she would send attorneys. Caldwell arrived with 6. He moved through the room smiling, shaking hands, and speaking in a voice designed to sound reasonable. When public comments began, residents described rent increases, lost businesses, and the dome's importance. Caldwell's attorneys answered with charts. They called the project inevitable, responsible, and economically necessary. Then Caldwell requested permission to speak. Change is frightening, he said. Certain individuals have turned a routine redevelopment into an emotional spectacle. One archive employee, whose personal relationship with our chief executive has already compromised public perception, appears to be using a child's attachment to an obsolete building as leverage. Nia's hand found Elias's. The room stirred with anger. Elias stood, but Dr. Saeed touched his arm. Not yet, the old astronomer whispered. Caldwell continued. Cities cannot preserve every memory. Progress requires discipline. The auditorium doors opened behind him. Mara entered alone. No security, no lawyers, no tailored armor. She wore the dark green dress from the aquarium and Elias's uneven rust-colored scarf. Every voice in the room faded. Caldwell smiled with visible relief. Ms. Vale, he said, perhaps you can clarify the company's position. Mara walked to the microphone. She looked first at Nia, then at Elias. Pain crossed her face, but she did not seek forgiveness. Not yet. Yes, she said. I can. 3 quick words, then a slow breath. She placed a thick file on the table. Vale Meridian's position is that this project was built on fraud, concealed displacement, falsified engineering, and executive negligence. Caldwell's smile disappeared. The entire auditorium became silent enough to hear the projector fan turning. Mara spoke for 22 minutes. She did not perform innocence. She named Caldwell's shell companies, the false structural reports, the excluded households, and the board members who had benefited. She also named herself. Every fraudulent document crossed a system I created, she said. My signature became a substitute for attention. I believed scale excused distance. It does not. Caldwell's attorney rose and demanded an adjournment. Mara did not look at him. Sit down, Raymond. Your firm received copies of the federal subpoenas this morning. The attorney sat. A wave of whispers traveled through the auditorium. Mara announced that Vale Meridian had withdrawn the demolition application, surrendered its claim to the dome, and placed the surrounding properties into an independently governed community land trust. The company would fund repairs, but it would receive no naming rights, ownership interest, or development control. This is not a gift, she said. It is restitution. Then she turned toward Caldwell. You described a child's attachment as leverage. You were wrong. Her attachment revealed the value your spreadsheets were designed to hide. She invited Nia to the microphone. Nia shook her head. Elias expected Mara to continue, but she waited. She did not pressure, rescue, or speak for her. After several seconds, Nia removed her headphones and walked to the stage. She placed the tactile map beside Mara's documents. This is the dome, she said. You can feel it even if you cannot see it. She guided one finger around the raised circular wall. Mr. Caldwell says cities cannot keep every memory. That is true, but adults should know the difference between losing something and selling it. Nobody moved. Caldwell stared at the floor. Mara's eyes filled, though she did not hide it. Respect had completed its quiet journey. Humiliation, doubt, silence, truth. Nia stepped away from the microphone. The room rose together, not in celebration of wealth, but in recognition of dignity. Outside the auditorium, snow fell through the parking lot lights. Reporters crowded the entrance, but Mara slipped through a side door and stood alone beside the athletic field. Elias found her there with her arms folded tightly against the cold. She still wore his scarf. You should be inside, he said. My communications director would agree. You fired him? Not yet. Growth. She smiled faintly, then looked toward the dark field. The board accepted my conditions. Caldwell is gone. 2 directors resigned. The investigation will continue. And you? I remain chief executive under independent oversight. It is less power than I had yesterday. How does that feel? Like breathing. They stood in silence while snow gathered on the chain-link fence. Elias had imagined this conversation many times. In some versions, he apologized first. In others, she did. Reality was quieter. I was cruel, he said. You were angry. Those are not opposites. Mara rubbed the edge of the scarf between her fingers. I tried to buy the dome because buying things is how I avoid helplessness. You were right to refuse. You were right that justice takes time. Do not make me too virtuous. It will damage my reputation. Elias looked at her. Nia put the scarf in a box. Mara's expression fell. I understand. She took it out this morning. Hope appeared carefully, as if afraid of being seen. Why? She said people who return stolen buildings may be allowed to return scarves. Mara laughed through a breath that almost became a sob. Elias stepped closer. I did not call you to the hearing because I needed you to save us, he said. I called because I hoped you would stand with us. I almost lost the right. Almost is not always the end. Mara met his eyes. Is this forgiveness? It is a second chance. She reached for his hand. This time, he did not mistake connection for danger. The Orion Dome reopened 11 months later. Its copper roof had been repaired rather than replaced, leaving the old weathered color visible beneath a protective finish. The neighborhood trust controlled the building. Vale Meridian's contribution appeared on no plaque. Instead, the lobby displayed the names of volunteers, teachers, tenants, children, engineers, and shop owners who had fought to preserve it. Elias left the municipal archive to become the dome's director of public history, combining old maps with astronomy exhibits that showed how cities and skies changed across generations. Nia designed a tactile constellation gallery called Light That Keeps Traveling. Visitors navigated raised star paths with their fingertips, while recordings of neighborhood residents played softly in the background. On opening night, Mara stood near the entrance greeting families. She no longer moved through public rooms like someone bracing for attack. Oversight had made her company slower, less profitable for 2 quarters, and far more honest. She had sold the private aircraft, reduced the executive fleet, and established an employee council with real authority. Newspapers called it a reinvention. Mara called it paying attention. Near midnight, after the last visitors left, Elias found her seated beneath the artificial stars. She held 2 paper cups of vending machine cocoa. "Terrible?" he asked. "Spectacularly." He sat beside her. Nia slept across 3 seats with her head on Mara's folded coat. "Do you remember the jellyfish?" Mara asked. "I remember being abandoned. I remember seeing you choose not to send a cruel message." Elias turned toward her. "You noticed that?" "I had been watching for 20 minutes. That sounds unsettling. It was strategic observation. You were hiding from directors. Both things can be true." She took his hand and placed the old laundromat key in his palm. "My grandmother believed keys should belong to people who understand what doors are for." Elias studied the worn brass. "Which door is this for?" "None anymore." Mara leaned her head against his shoulder. "That is why I can finally give it away." Nia woke long enough to see Elias holding the key. "Is that a proposal?" she asked sleepily. Mara nearly spilled her cocoa. Elias stared at the child. "Go back to sleep. That means yes. It means you are 8 and observant." Mara covered her mouth, laughing. Elias looked from the key to Mara's face. Their love had not arrived as a miracle carriage, a perfect rescue, or a reward for suffering. It had arrived through discomfort, through soup and snow, false reports and hard questions, public truth and private correction. It had required Mara to learn that generosity without respect could become another form of power. It had required Elias to learn that caution without grace could become another form of fear. "It isn't a proposal," he told Nia. "Not tonight." Mara's eyebrows rose. "Not tonight?" Elias felt his face warm. "I'm attempting to preserve some mystery." "You repair maps for a living," Mara said. "Mystery is not your natural medium." Nia sat up and wrapped Mara's coat around herself like a blanket. "You should ask under the stars," she advised. "That is extremely predictable," Elias replied. "People like predictable when they have had enough surprises." The wisdom silenced both adults. Elias looked upward. The projector cast thousands of points across the dome, but one section remained intentionally dark, representing stars whose light had not yet reached Earth. "All right," he said quietly. "Not tonight, but soon." Mara took the key from his palm, threaded it onto the chain beside her grandmother's ring, and gave it back. "Then keep this until soon." He closed his fingers around it. No audience applauded. No cameras flashed. The room held only the hum of the projector, Nia's uneven breathing, and 2 people choosing not to walk away. Sometimes dignity is not loud. Sometimes redemption does not arrive with thunder. Sometimes the world changes because someone takes the empty chair, someone else makes room, and both remain when leaving would be easier. 6 months later, beneath those same projected stars, Elias asked Mara to marry him. Nia stood between them, holding the ring box and correcting every sentence he had rehearsed. Dr. Saeed cried before Elias finished speaking. Mr. Han supplied dumplings for the reception and informed guests that rich people still had to chew. Mara wore no designer gown, only a simple ivory dress and the rust-colored scarf wrapped around her shoulders. When Elias slipped the ring onto her finger, she whispered, "You gave me somewhere honest." He shook his head. "You chose to become honest." That distinction mattered. Love had not rescued Mara from wealth or Elias from struggle. It had demanded that both bring their whole lives into the same room without turning difference into shame. The Orion Dome remained public. Vale Meridian continued its reforms. Nia eventually got her dog, a calm, elderly rescue named Atlas, who shed everywhere and ignored every budgetary requirement. Some evenings, Elias and Mara still returned to the ferry terminal, bought dumplings, and crossed the river without destination. From the deck, the city looked neither like an asset nor a battlefield. It looked human, bright, damaged, unfinished, worth protecting. And whenever someone recognized Mara and asked how a chief executive had fallen in love with a single father who repaired old maps, she gave the same answer. He was sitting alone, but he was not empty. Elias would correct her. She sat down without permission. Nia would add, he needed help. They would argue, laugh, and keep walking, because the deepest miracles are rarely gifts dropped into our hands. They are choices repeated after the wonder fades, to listen, to repair, to tell the truth, to remain. A failed evening did not define Elias. Power did not define Mara. Grief did not define Nia. Quiet dignity gave each of them room to become more than what had happened before. And beneath a ceiling full of artificial stars, their second chance became real enough to light the dark. Sometimes the moment that rewrites our future doesn't arrive with fireworks. It slips across an empty chair in a cafe, wrapped in a stranger's borrowed scarf. Elias believed caution kept him and 8-year-old Nia safe. Mara trusted power to fix every problem. Yet both had to unlearn their favorite defenses before they could protect what truly mattered. A roof full of stars that belonged to everyone. Their story reminds us that grace is not weakness. It is the discipline to face the damage our choices create and then stay in the room long enough to repair it. When we choose honesty over convenience, respect over rescue, and community over profit, we turn second chances into solid ground. Maybe you stand at a crossroads right now, between confronting a mistake or pretending you never saw it, between offering a plastic apology or real restitution. Choose the harder road. Choose to remain. Because the world changes every time an ordinary person says, "That isn't right. Let me help fix it." What would you fight to preserve in your city, your family, your heart? Drop your answer below, hit that subscribe button, and join a community that believes dignity and courage still matter. Your voice could be the spark that lights somebody else's night sky.